Whatever you might be going through and wherever you might be, this is Omar Serrato with the Tilted Lawyer Podcast. I'm here to take your mind off of things. Yes, I'm an attorney. No, I'm not giving you legal advice. We're going to sit and talk like people, as these are the candid thoughts of one practicing attorney, and it's after hours. So have a seat. Feel free to have a drink and join me. Let's get started. Now, strictly for our subscribers, and if you're welcome to stick along, we are going to bring in the purple haze lights and give our legal advice on various family law scenarios. This has nothing to do with Christopher Watts. Just know that. I'm going to, this is strictly for our subscribers. If it's your time to check out, then check out. But I screwed that up, didn't I? It is time. Hey, Dominic, how do I do this? I'm asking you like you know. Here it is. Here it is. It's time to bring in Purple Haze. All right. So, family law after dark. You know, I've had this whiskey sitting here for the entire show, an hour 47 minutes now, and I don't think I've taken a sip. But now it is appropriate. So, let us get in to some of these inquiries. Here we go. Let's begin. I'm going to go in reverse order here. All right, we're going to do 3. Legal divorce advice needed, please. Oh, this will be a good one for you, Eliana. Okay. It says, hello, I am stuck in an extremely abusive marriage with a husband of 2 years. I live separately from him. He is living in the house that we bought together, and which is my down payment too. We have no children, thank God, and I am unable to get out of this marriage because he is not agreeing for a divorce, and I cannot take his abuse longer, and hence I cannot go back to him. Let me just begin with this caveat. I don't know if she's living in a no-fault state or not. Exactly. Nobody gives a shit whose fault it is. In California, nobody cares. And if it's at fault state, I'm 99% positive that domestic violence would be a reason that a judge would grant a divorce. So let's get over the notion that you need anybody's permission.
In other words, in California, you don't need the permission or the other person to agree.
Or a good reason. Yeah. You don't even need a reason.
Which is something that, I don't know, a lot of people think that they need the other party to agree to.
Oh, it's because in the movies, it's like, oh, I got you now. I got you on candid camera, cheating on me with the I don't know, the postman or somebody. You didn't need all of that, dipshit. You just needed to file your petition. That's in California. That is unique to us in California. She says, I want my stuff back, which is in that house, like furniture, down payments, which was all purchased by me as part of the dowry cultural system that I belong to, where the tradition is the girl had to spend for everything. So that would be akin to her inheritance, separate property, I'm assuming. Yes. This dowry system issue is a different story, as I didn't have a say when I asked my parents not to spend for my furniture. So basically, me and my parents paid for everything that he is having in that house. Now, I want to get out of this situation very badly, and I want to get a divorce. I'm not in a financial condition where I can go legally because I do not have financial capacity to pay for attorneys. I live in the East Coast in the U.S. How do I get my stuff back? How do I handle this? Help me, please. It wasn't clear to me. Did she say that she purchased these things during marriage? This dowry system.
I'm thinking usually Indian culture, the female family gives like the money to purchase pretty much everything, or they give like the stuff to the marriage. That's what I'm thinking. Here's
the breakdown. Taking this from a community property perspective, because I believe most of the states on the East Coast are community property states.
I think so, yes.
I forget which ones are not. I don't know. But let's just assume it is community property. If it's not community property, then they base everything on separation based on equity. So what you put in is what you get out. In the most paraphrasing of legal principles. But in a community property state, here's the rules. If you purchase this stuff with your money, prior to your 2-year marriage, that's your separate property anyway. You don't have to have a court order. I mean, they could order it, but that's your separate property. You could just get an order to retrieve your stuff. You got to file for the divorce. You have to set the grounds for the divorce, the grounds being domestic violence in this case. I don't know if she has proof or to the extent in which she would have to prove domestic violence, but judging from most domestic violence statutes, domestic violence is a very broad spectrum. It's not limited to physical abuse. You go on a number of different things. And for example, in California, it's anything that disturbs the peace of an individual, literally meaning that you could wear an article of clothing that so offends the conscience to be an act of domestic violence. And what scenario is that possibly? Well, your wife wants to go out and she's dressed like she's going to the strip club or whatever with all of her friends because she knows it's going to piss you off. Can be considered, and I've seen it alleged as an act of domestic violence. Never mind that. To the extent, I'm just going to assume that let's just assume that you could prove domestic violence. You're going to be granted a divorce based off of that. Once you're in, assuming it's a community property state, you're going to state what items are in that house that belong to you as your separate property.
Meaning what you brought before.
What you brought into the marriage, you get to keep. But more importantly, even if they bought it during the marriage because of this dowry system, if she purchased it with her own money, maybe we can just prove that it's her separate property anyway because it came from separate property sources. I don't know how a dowry works in her scenario.
I don't know. I think it's actually the parents, so it will be a gift.
If it was from the parents, then it would be akin to an inheritance. But it could also be interpreted as a gift to the community.
Yes, a gift to the community is what I think it would be more akin to, because the parents, I mean, inheritance, they will need to die. The parents are probably still alive.
That's true. Assuming that that's the source of the income. Maybe it was the grandparents.
Yes.
We don't know. And again, depending on how that dowry works, I need a lot more facts, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
So here's the deal with the down payment. If you paid for that house with the down payment, if you paid from your own separate stash of money that was not community money, meaning it didn't come from a bank account that you guys owned jointly, or it wasn't from money that you earned during the 2-year marriage, then you're entitled to 100% in most states of a reimbursement for that down payment. And that's not the case in every state. And I don't know what state she is. She didn't really say.
She's in the East Coast, she said. So.
There's a lot of East Coast states.
Yeah.
But for example, in California, if you used money you'd been saving prior to marriage to spend $100,000 on a down payment, well, upon divorce, you get all that money back, 100%.
Or say that you have a house prior to marriage and you get married and then you sell that house and go ahead and use that money for a down payment, then whatever amount of money for the down payment, that's your separate property.
It just has to be a source of money that that was basically your separate income or asset or something, right? That's it. That's how we characterize it. If you can't do that, then you're not entitled, and you're not entitled to recover it. Then basically you request or a forced sale of all of that furniture and you guys split the proceeds. That's how it works. Those are really the only two outcomes. And honestly, I need a lot more, but the tenor of her question was, how do I get my stuff back? Well, you request it back in your divorce petition and characterize it as your separate property and be prepared to prove it. And we've gone over some of the ways that you can do that. How to get out of the marriage in a at-fault state, you're going to have to prove the domestic violence. So that's really all I got to say for this person. Without more additional facts, this is about as best I could do. Let's move on to another one. This person, it's a short but sweet one, which is a good thing.
Okay.
So I'm looking for some advice on how to go about divorcing my spouse. We have no kids, no joint accounts, no shared assets, and we don't own any property together. And it seems like it would be an easy divorce. Does anyone have any recommendations on affordable divorce lawyers, since I'm 100% sure this will be a simple, uncontested divorce? Also, should I go ahead and start the separation, and do I need to prepare an agreement for that? I'm nervous and just not sure where to start. We are ending a 10-plus year marriage, and this is, of course, my first time. Okay. So her name is Miss Rumi. I'm assuming that she is a female. 10-year marriage. That is a long-term marriage in the state of California. So it may not be as simple as you would hope. Attorneys are expensive. 100% they are. But when you're divorcing people, it's really worth it to get yourself a good attorney to protect your assets, because you have no idea sometimes what you're giving up. And look, what I would say is this: if it's really a simple, uncontested divorce, then don't go hire an attorney. Try to get it done on your own. File the divorce petition by yourself. And you mentioned, should I legally get an agreement for separation? No, if you want to divorce, just divorce them.
Yeah.
I mean, you could apply for a legal separation. You can do that. It's a big waste of time, in my opinion.
It is, yes.
You're gonna get that was almost.
It's like doing double the work.
Yeah.
To end up in the same place. Like, it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
I mean, but I've seen some people do it.
I mean, if you're thinking legal separation, just file for divorce. If you want to reverse it, then reverse it. You can do that. But I digress. No kids is a great thing. That makes it easier to separate. No joint accounts doesn't mean anything.
Doesn't mean, yeah. And the same thing with the no shared assets. That's like a misconception whenever I do consultations. Oh, we don't have anything together, but separately, do you have a bank account that you keep money in? Do you have a retirement account?
Yep.
And they're like, oh, yes. Then that's then community property. So it's not as simple as it seems.
Yeah. Like I could see a scenario where she's sitting in my office and she's like, oh yeah, we don't have any joint accounts, but you got a retirement account? Yeah, but it's only in my name. Well, he's entitled to like a good portion of it, depending on how long you've had it for and the date of marriage and date of separation, whatever. We'd have to do a quadro in California to determine that qualified domestic relations order. I hate that term. But yeah, he's entitled to a lot more than you think. You're entitled to a lot more of his stuff than you think. And the problem isn't that you guys want to get a divorce without any, hiccups. It's just that it's really hard to do that when people figure out that they're entitled to way more than they thought. And then it's like, well, I want it to be peaceful, but I want to get everything I'm entitled to. It's like, all right, well, he's not going to agree to that. For example, one of you two, because this is a 10-year plus marriage, if you were in the state of California and somebody requested alimony, the judge doesn't have any legal authority to put an expiration date on the award of alimony unless there's an agreement. What does that mean? It means that somebody's going to get awarded alimony and it's going to run until either one of you dies or remarries. That's alimony for life. Did you know that? Does he know that? Are you entitled to alimony? Is it he? Is it going to be him? Have you had those discussions? Those are important things because somebody catches wind. So I'd assume that it's going to be something like, oh, we'll terminate rights to spouse. And then it's like, oh, wait a minute. I could get like $1,500 for life. Really? All right. Well, I think it's fair because I put in 10 years in this marriage and I've helped him while he went and got on and got his career. And all of a sudden people start getting bitter.
And then it's not as simple.
The truth is that nobody really needs a divorce attorney if it was that simple. The problem is that people have egos and people have emotions and they have feelings. And when they start figuring out that they're entitled to a lot more than they thought, well, that's when the complications come. So look, there's a lot of attorneys that are out there that will do consultations for free. I do free consultations. Ileana does free consultations. And I won't tell you how to litigate your case because I can't get that done in an hour. But I will tell you that, look, these are the issues. This is what's going to be very difficult to settle. This is what he's going to be. This is what he's going to know and not going to want to give up. And this is what you're entitled to. Did you know all of that? And at the end of it is, okay, well, maybe we'll just write up an agreement, but then you're asking for all this stuff and he's not going to agree to that. And now we're litigating. And now we're going through discovery. And now we're, RFOs for temporary support, RFOs for forced sale of the house, RFOs for forced sale of the vehicles. And then it becomes a mess. Then it gets all the way, well, I want the silver back. That was my bed springs. That was my, what do you call those things? The bed foundations. I forget.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
But they get really crazy with it. Once you get started down that rabbit hole, there's virtually no end until you spent tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in attorney fees. And we're 2 years later and, in a trial that has persisted for months, if not years, because we don't have consecutive days to give you in court. And so we're constantly, I got a case like that now. I have a trial that started in July of 22.
Oh, wow.
It is now 24, and the trial is still going.
Oh, my goodness. But for the same issues or?
Yes. Because there's lots of evidence and we can't get through it, and they can't give us consecutive days in that department, or they haven't historically. And I mean, there's some other stuff like request for continuances because somebody didn't show up to court or somebody miscalendared the date or whatever. That happens. But just an example, it's a literally 1.5 year long trial for something that should have been so simple.
Yeah.
So my recommendations is try to get it done for free. If you guys come up and draft an agreement and it says, we'll keep the debts in our name, we'll keep the assets in our name, we don't own a house, that's good. Don't have to worry about child support. Both of us will terminate our rights to alimony, terminate our rights to each other's retirement accounts, and he will agree to it and you'll agree to it. Then fine, write it up. You don't need me to do that. Just do it. And if the judge signs it, then you guys are officially divorced and then you got it done for free. But the second somebody catches wind, well, you're going to want to give me a call. But it is in your best interest to, at the very least, find a free consultation so you at least know what you're looking at. Because I bet you didn't know that I was going to talk for however long I've just been talking about this very simple fact pattern. But there's a lot more of it than meets the eye. Like, it's simple to you, but I'm looking at red flags all the way down the line.
And the alternative is that sometimes people don't seek that at least consultation to know what they're entitled to. They end up doing an agreement that they think that is correct. And then, I don't know, a couple of months later, they realize
Rejected.
It's like, no, not only that, they say they accept it. And a couple of months later, they realize, oh, I could have had part of his retirement. And now what do I do?
Well, you already agreed to it, so that's a moot point. What do you want now?
I had a case once like that. The guy even did. Well, actually, I'm doing one right now, where they did everything by agreement, and now they want to change everything, and it's like, oh.
I had a case like, well,
a little bit hard.
I had this one case where the guy signs an interspousal transfer, giving her 100% of the house, and it was notarized and all of this stuff. And then he says, I signed it under duress. She withheld sex from me, and her mom was pressuring me into signing it. And then it's like, that was his literal defense in court. It didn't work out.
There's so many other reasons why you sign a interspousal.
He would have done a lot better. He would have had a better chance of just saying that, oh, well, we did it because her credit was better than mine.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that happens all the time. And then you're relying on equitable principles for the judge to not do something so unconscionable to award the entire house to you when you guys clearly were pooling your resources together. And so, but no, he went with withholding sex fra. He was pro per. Yeah. He would have been really helped by having an attorney in that moment. But do not. If your divorcing partner has an attorney, do not be so egotistical as to suggest that you are going to be able to hold your own against this attorney. They know things that you don't know. They know the rules that you don't know. They know how to keep all of your evidence out that you want to show the judge, and they know how to present it in a way that hits all of the main notes according to the family code or the laws of your state. And so do not put yourself at that severe disadvantage. Get yourself an attorney, especially if he has one. And most attorneys will give you free consultations, even the expensive ones. Because what, you want to have a 1 hour conversation about your case? I'll do it. I'll do it for free. Sometimes I'll do it right on the phone. They'll call, I was just wondering if I could schedule an appointment. Well, tell me what's going on. And then we'll have like this 30-minute conversation. And so just call around. Advice is free sometimes. So let us move on from this one and move into this doozy. All right. This will be the last one.
Doozy. I can see from here it's long. Oh my.
All right. My husband and I have been separated for almost a year. He is 35. I'm 33. We have been together since we were 21 and 19 respectively. He is a recovering addict. He's never worked, I've supported him for all but 2 of the years we were together. He's stolen from me. He's cheated on me and was physically abusive, verbally and mentally. I got fed up after we had our son, who was now 3. He tried to unalive me twice. Once while holding my son. Right before our separation, I did step out of our marriage, which ended it fully. All right. However, this man goes above and beyond to make my life miserable. Our son has autism. He can't be left with just anyone, so finding daycare was a struggle. He refuses to help with daycare expenses. I pay for my son's medical, dental, vision, insurance through work. And I will add to that my daughter, who was diagnosed autistic, got kicked out of like 2 different preschools.
Mm-hmm.
I remember we had her into one preschool and they just said, we cannot with Olivia. Mm-hmm. And she's attacking the other kids. Mm-hmm. Whether or not she was doing that, I don't know. But my non-autistic kid, Evelyn, got kicked out of the same school because she allegedly bit another kid that took her Legos or something.
Wow.
And at that point, I was like, are you guys, I mean, isn't that not in common with toddlers?
Yes, it's pretty common.
Yeah, so she gets kicked out of this other one. So we take her to this more expensive Christian style daycare.
Okay.
And then I remember taking a tour of the facility and they're like, so our method of discipline, and they go on to talk about, we try to integrate biblical principles into teaching these toddlers the rules of stuff. Mm-hmm. And neither one of myself nor my wife are all that particularly religious. And yeah, whatever, it's fine. You know, probably good behavioral foundation. Mm-hmm. Wasn't that big of a deal. They had like a chickens and they would do like projects and we really liked it. But then their disciplinary methods were, when one of the toddlers step out of line, we have this square, and it was literally like this red masking tape, a square on the floor. And they have to stand there and think about what they did and how they could have improved their behavior. Mm. And I'm thinking like, so what's keeping them in the square?
I know.
And my daughter would have been like, what, 2 or 3 at the time? Mm-hmm. I don't know, but she got kicked out of that one too. It just got, Olivia's a bit much and we're having to devote all this extra attention to her because she won't follow directions. So she got kicked out of that one too. And then ultimately we had to get her ABA therapy in home because that was the only way she wasn't going to get kicked out of a place. We still needed daycare. I was working, my wife was working. And at that time she wasn't even working from home. She was actually working at a place. And so, yeah, it was expensive. ABA care was expensive. Daycare was expensive. And, let alone for one child, she has 2 children. Mm-hmm. I think she said 2, or am I just misremembering that? Oh, she says we have a son. Okay.
The 3-year-old.
Yeah, well, it's still expensive. It's probably like a $1,500, a couple $1,000 a month. It's not cheap. Mm-hmm. So, especially ABA kids, there's only so many places you could take them, especially if they're like 3. Mm-hmm. And I don't know the extent of autism. I mean, luckily for Olivia, I mean, you look at her right now, she's like a normal child, but there's some that are very clearly severely impaired by their autism.
Yes.
And it's just a different.
There's like, I have had a lot of conservatorship cases with autistic children that they're nonverbal, so completely. Mm-hmm. And there's like a big range. And I don't know if you've ever seen on Netflix, Love on the Spectrum.
Yes.
So you can see there like the different levels.
Yes. I watched that show. Yeah. I remember watching that show and just being horrified because when that show came out, I want to say that was when Olivia was just diagnosed and I didn't know if she was going to be nonverbal because at that point she was not talking. She was not hitting any of her benchmarks for verbal anything. And so, but now she talks all the time. I mean, she's like a little walking dictionary. And she picks up on stuff that, I mean, she just got a brilliant ability to focus while it doesn't look like she's focusing on stuff. Like my mom was telling me about how she was listening to why people's hands and feet wrinkle in the bathtub and some like random show that she was listening to on PBS or something. And then Olivia was in the bathtub and she was like reciting some of the finer points. It was like just shocked that she picked up on that. I'm not saying my kid's a super genius. I'm just saying that sometimes she's there and it doesn't look like she's there and she's aware of everything.
Yes.
I'm very similar that way. Like my wife tells me all the time that it doesn't look like I'm listening, but I'm picking up on all this other stuff. And I very often have to like multitask. So I'm like watching something and like playing chess on my phone and like the kids are doing. Either way, she picks up on that stuff. Let me move on. So she has a significant dilemma. That kind of daycare is expensive. So he only has our son from 7:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Wednesdays. Did I skip something? Oh, he refuses to pay for daycare. I pay for my son's medical, dental, vision through work. That's good. He only has our son from 7:30 to 1 p.m. on Wednesdays, 7:30 to 1 p.m. on Thursdays, and then he picks him up at 10:30 p.m. and has him until 12 p.m. on Saturday. So I guess he has an overnight from Friday to Saturday. So yeah, that's difficult. What if your husband, I want you to picture a world, because you told me last week that your husband, my mom said, I've never seen a man like do as much as your husband does. You like lucked out, like he's like doing all of these things, and you're very lucky in that regard, because I've changed diapers of my daughters maybe less than 20 times.
I didn't change a diaper the first 2 weeks after I gave birth.
Oh, your wife is so lucky, man.
But
or your wife, your husband is so.
I had a
or you were so
C-section.
lucky.
Yeah, I was like, I mean, I can't. And
This was the contract I had with my wife.
yeah,
I say it was a verbal contract that was enforceable.
verbal contract.
I was like, hey, if we had a boy, I would change all the diapers, but it's girls. And so that's what happened.
And that's very typical, because I have a friend and it's exactly the same. They have a boy, a girl. He helps with the boy, changing diapers, everything. But
Yeah.
he doesn't do it with the girl.
But there's like an inappropriateness to that I think that most men feels like,
Yeah.
I shouldn't be changing these diapers. Like, you know what? Only women know hygiene for women like women. I don't know. I mean, I could learn, but still, I'm like your dad. I'm not going to, here, you do this. So,
At least in my eyes, like, and I think also in my husband's eyes, when they're so little, it's okay. And then it's the inappropriateness starts like at a certain age, I guess.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I've experienced that with my eldest. My eldest is 17. At some point, we used to go like back when I was a single dad. One of our things would like we'd go to the drive-in, like the drive up and like the old school we would do that, and then she would always like to sit on my lap and like watch the movies or whatever. And around like 5 or 6 years old or 7, I can't recall specifically, but there was definitely a time where it's just not a thing anymore. You know, and it happens organically.
Exactly.
And it's not a big deal, but there's always this weirdness. Like, why am I changing the diapers? Also, I don't want to see all this. Hey, if it was a boy, I would be responsible for all of it, but it is not. And so therefore, I've used that line for years now.
Oh, God.
I've gotten away with it.
You have gotten away with it.
My wife has very graciously, let me get away with it. Never mind that. But just imagine my whole point behind this.
Yes, you were going to say.
So 5 hours on a Wednesday or 5 hours on a Thursday and then overnight. So that means like 85% of the time, child is only with you and you're working because she has a job. And the child is autistic to some degree, where it's difficult for her to find daycare that suggests behavioral problems. That is a lot to deal with by yourself.
Yeah.
And this guy, track record of doesn't work. She supported him all but 2 years of the marriage, domestic violence. He's one of those types. You know what I mean? He just never, the failure to launch types, never got a job, never progressed with life beyond high school and been living off of his wife all of these years. And so he's not going to be like, for example, your husband, who's like doing all of it. And you were so blessed to have that. I can't even say that I do that for my wife. I mean, yeah, the disparity in workloads between the children, just historically, between men and women is just a lot different. Yeah. But she doesn't even have a living. And so it's just...
She has less than the standard.
Yeah. And then check this out. He works nights, I work days. So I've suggested that he keep him during the day until he has to go to school. That would really help with daycare. And I keep him at night after school, and we can alternate weekends. And that way our son isn't in school when he's only with his father or me.
Mm-hmm.
Neither have to pay for childcare. And ultimately our son is better off, which I agree. And he's refusing to help in any way. He doesn't pick up or drop off. I am somehow responsible for both. He won't keep him extra if there's an emergency. If he is sick, he won't keep him. I miss work and have to pay extra for childcare outside of daycare. He really just does whatever he can to make things difficult when I go out of my way to accommodate him. I know legally a parent has to have the child 30% of the time to get 50-50. What is that rule?
I know. You know what? Somebody in a consultation mentioned that to me the other day, and I was like, what?
What is that?
What I heard is that apparently to keep, how did that they explain it? You have to have 30% or more of physical custody in order to actually have real 50-50 legal custody. Because if you have less than 30, you can move away with the child.
That's nonsensical. Well, that's not a thing in California.
I know, but somebody mentioned that to me the other day. I was like, oh, like I never heard of this before. So this is the second time that I hear it.
I don't know. Maybe it's a thing in some other state, but I've never heard of that rule. It doesn't exist in California. I can tell you that. And yeah, 50-50 is 50-50. And what's more is in California, they don't give a shit about percentage. I mean, they do for child support calculations, but for custody, they don't go by percentages. What days can you realistically have the child? And we go by dates and times and give me a schedule and we adopt a schedule that comes out to a percentage. But the 30% rule, I've never heard of that rule before. Okay, so he talks to me like a dog, tries to make up new rules. This morning I brought my son to his door. He was banging and crying to get in, and his father wouldn't answer the door because he's not at my beck and call. I would prefer not to have to go to court, but I don't see any way around this. Please help.
Yeah.
Well, let me just start off by saying that your ex-husband is a piece of shit. 100% up and down. His value as a man is very small. Let me just give you a psychological profile of this guy. He is the type of guy. He's never worked, recovering addict. He was hoping in high school that, somebody was going to discover his genius and just give him all of these things that he thinks he's entitled to because he's so much smarter than everybody else, but he has severe insecurities. He has issues with responsibility. He has issues with ego. And the fact that you have been able to hold that family down for as long as you did greatly diminishes his ego and emasculates him in a way that deeply hurts him to the point where he lashes out and treats you this way, which extends to your children because you are so much more attentive to your children than you ever were to him. Because what reason has he ever given you to be attentive to him? I mean, if you had a husband that was chipping in and was like holding his weight, maybe he wasn't making as much as you, but he was working. He was out there busting his ass, aspiring to be something, aspiring to contribute, as opposed to waiting around for somebody to discover his genius. I'd imagine that you would treat him a lot better, but the fact that he's putting you down and talking to you like a dog and treating you such a way, the mother of his children and his children such a way, because it's the only way that he could establish any form of dominance, because it certainly wouldn't come on its own merit. It has nothing to do more than the destruction of his ego over the years of watching you be the breadwinner while he rots away. And he's drowning all of that in abusive substances. What substance? I don't know. Marijuana, meth, heroin, pick one. Doesn't matter. He's letting himself rot. He's rotting from the inside out. And that rot is extending to you and your son. He's a piece of shit. And there's no going around that. I'm not so quick to crucify men like that. I'm not so quick to crucify anybody like that. But if you were my mom, if you were my sister, well, if you were my mom, we would handle this a different kind of way. If you were a family member, if you were a friend, I would be telling you to get out of that. Matter of fact, let's make him a deal. Let's make him a deal. I'll tell you what, why don't you just go away? Why don't you just abandon your family, since we're such a burden to you? he's probably not going to take that because it's even more further destruction of his ego. But in the hopes that maybe he latches on to that because then he doesn't have to see what a piece of shit he has. And he's reminded constantly because he has this beautiful son that he has, this beautiful wife that's taking care of and holding down what he could never hold down because he never tried. Is there reasons for that? Maybe, I don't know. His daddy didn't teach him how to be a man properly. Maybe he had attachment issues with his mom. Maybe his mom didn't hug him enough. Maybe he got bullied in school. Maybe he grew up as like the star athlete and everybody stopped giving a shit about it once he graduated from high school, and then there was nothing left for him to conquer. He was an early bloomer, and that was the peak sophomore year of high school. Varsity championship game. He's literally turned into Al Bundy. And of course I'm speculating and, but listen, there's a lot of single women out there like you that exist with men like that. I will always defend a man that is imperfect, that knows he's imperfect, but strives to be a part of his children's lives because he believes it's important on some level. I'm always willing to work with that. But what you are describing to me, assuming that there is not any pushback to that, assuming, because I'm obviously not getting this story from him. What you are describing is like the lowest of the low.
Yes.
There's nothing redeeming about that. Assuming he's doing all of that so you get out. And furthermore, you should have called law enforcement on multiple occasions, but you didn't for whatever reasons I'm not going to judge you for. But he is not a guy that you should ever again rely on reasonably for help. And your reliance on him for daycare, as much sense as that makes logically, he's not going to be there for you. He's not going to be there for you today. He's 35 years old. He's not changing anytime soon. And guess what? For this guy, it is all downhill from here. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that he's not the most attractive of men. And I preface that on saying that he has a substance abuse problem and he's starting to age and he's 35, and most addicts do not take care of themselves. They don't keep themselves in shape. And so it's rapidly going to decline. It's going to go quick. He's going to start losing his hair. He's going to start graying. He's going to start getting a belly. He's going to start... His imperfections are going to be so pronounced, he's not going to be of any worth to you whatsoever. And so you just have to start getting it across your mind that you are in this by yourself. And though your prospects are not the best because you are going literally a single mom with a child who is autistic, that has an ex who is the perpetrator of domestic violence with substance abuse issues, that is probably on that basis unpredictable. Having to navigate the world of finding another mate potentially and getting somebody to buy into all of that. That is so difficult. Eliana, I got to tell you, when I met my wife, I was basically a single dad. But for a man, it's like, oh, you're such a good father. It was like this major selling. When I was living the single life, it was like, oh, you're such a good dad. Let me buy your child gifts. Like people literally bring my daughter gifts. It was like, you were not meeting my daughter.
Yes, exactly.
What is wrong with you? And, not that they were ill-intentioned or anything, but when a man confronts a single woman with a child, your value to that man drops. They will have sex with you, but they will not get in a relationship with you unless a number of things happen. What those things are is independent to every single man. And so I greatly sympathize with her. But let me just bring up the example of my mom, who was on the show last week.
Yes.
And everybody was like, hey, your mom's beauty secrets. You should bring her back on. So I was like, hey, maybe the show isn't about makeup tutorials. It's not really our jam. But, people really like to bring on the show. But my mom, she had me when she was 16 years old. She was a single mom. And then she had my brother at 19
Okay.
with my dad. And so she had 2 kids at 19. They got married around that time, like when they were 19. They got divorced because my dad was an idiot. I mean, he was a dumbass. He was 19. He was running around doing stupid things, whatever, doesn't matter, over, done with. But she had this whole haul of kids, and she is right now married to an attorney who makes his own money, that does very well for himself, that took on the role of being stepdad to all of her children. Not me, I was much older at that point. But like, they have a daughter together, and they're doing very well. It's out there. You can put yourself out there. It's going to be harder for you, for sure, because the package that you present is not ideal. But you got to stop at some point relying on this man. And I'll tell you what, my mom at some point stopped relying on my dad because he was a dumbass. And it was the best decision that she ever made. As much as I love my father, he was not equipped to deal with what he was charged to deal with. And I don't blame him for that. It is what it is. He was a kid trying to play grown folks' business. But she had to cut ties, and she did what she had to do, and she was successful in finding somebody that would respect her the way that she deserved to be respected. So she has to give up on this guy. Whatever he's willing to give you, great. He's your child's father. That's never going to change. He's always going to be around in some capacity, but you have to shift your mindset. No, he's not going to pay for the health insurance. No, he's not going to pay for the daycare. He's not even going to open the door for your 3-year-old child when he's banging on the door because he's not at his beck and call. What kind of piece of shit would say something like that? A man that is willing to that degree embarrass a child and a mother is a deeply wounded man. And at 35 years old, you cannot expect that he's ever going to recover. Is it possible? Sure. But I'm not sticking around to find out the end of the story. Let's just assume that he's never going to get better. And if by some miracle he does, then fine. Good for him. But you're not dependent on him anymore. You must take up the role as single mom. And you know what? You got to stop crying about it. And I know that might be hard to say. That might be hard to hear. But nobody's coming to help you. You need to get used to the idea that you're doing this by yourself. And resolve yourself to the perseverance that is required to successfully navigate the waters that are facing you. And only when you find it within yourself, the strength within yourself, because it ain't coming from that dumb, are you going to be able to be what your son needs you to be, because he's not going to get it from his dad. Your son is going to have to learn how to be a man through you. Is it unfair? Yeah, but nobody cares. And it's at this point, Ileana, that I bring up the point about how therapy damages people because they think that, oh, I feel triggered, I feel sad, and so therefore I have an excuse. Bullshit. Talk to me about all of that stupid shit. Dominic, bleep me out. Talk to me about all of that stupid stuff after you do handle your responsibilities, and then we could talk about how much it sucks. I'm not going to say that it doesn't suck. I'm not going to say that you shouldn't go to therapy to fix your emotions, to navigate your emotions, but do not let that be an excuse to prevent you from being the mom that your son needs you to be, because your son is going to see that piece of shit and they're going to resolve themselves to never turn out that way, never treat a woman that way, never treat a child that way, never let yourself go the way that his dad has. And he has the potential to be something great, but it's up to you to cultivate that in him. And if you can do that, you can turn him into something that he could be proud of, that you will be proud of. And you're no longer reliant on this piece of abuser, because he's no longer in the equation. He's no longer a variable. If he's an invariable, he's not an important variable. He's a manageable variable. What do you have to say about that, Eliana?
Well, I know you focus, of course, on a lot on whether or not she should just separate, I guess, and just not rely on him. And I do agree, she needs to stop relying on him. That's something that it's very common I think I get a lot of consultations or clients where they want the other person to pull their weight. And unfortunately, there's not that many legal ways to make them change and be responsible. Like
you can't force somebody to be a dad.
Exactly.
You just can't.
Now, but from the entire rambling in there.
My rambling or her rambling? Because I know
her rambling.
I definitely rambled.
What I don't understand is what was her question? Like, what does she need advice? Like,
that's what I'm getting at. Like, what do you want us to say? That I could get like a judge to order him to be a good dad?
Yeah, like
or
there's
not
no
be a
way to do that. I mean, you can maybe put the child in some sort of child care and then maybe ask for child support and include child care in there, and then he's gonna be upset. But if he's not helping you, then you gotta pay for the help, and he's gonna pull his weight with the help. I mean, with payment. But other than that, I don't know what other legal advice.
Let's just assume that we get her a child support order where he's forced to pay daycare.
Mm-hmm.
What's the guarantee that he's gonna pay? Well, then we'll bring him up for back pay and arrears. Okay, what's the guarantee he's gonna pay that?
That's the only thing. Yeah.
Which is why my logical conclusion is, hey, sometimes you just got to cut your losses.
Mm-hmm.
Stop relying on him so heavily for anything. Expect exactly zero from him. And let him wither off into the sunset if that's what he's going to do. You were 33 years old. You were not that old to give up and give in to a piece of shit like that. There are men out there that are willing to step up for you. And I got to be honest with you. I would not advise a man to get involved in your situation until you hit certain benchmarks, and only after certain things happen in a relationship. So you got to pull yourself together. And the first step is writing off that guy forever. And in the process of doing that, relying only on yourself. And I don't want you to feel sorry for yourself. And I know that you don't. But I don't want you to use this scenario as an excuse about why you can't excel. You get yourself together. You get your finances right. You depend on yourself only. And you go out and you live your life and resolve yourself to raising this child all by yourself, because that is your charge for the next 15 years, maybe longer. So take care of yourself and stop relying on this guy. That's my advice. There's no legal advice that I could give you that's going to fix him as a man. That's just something that's deeply seated within him. But you know what? He could be a piece of shit all by himself. Let him. You move on to greener pastures. And that's all I had to say about that. Eliana, any closing thoughts?
No, I'm just hungry.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to wrap up this segment of Family Law After Dark. We will see you guys all next week when I don't know what topic we're going to do, but we're going to do something with a brand new case, brand new scenarios, brand new highlights, brand new stuff, and of course another segment of After Dark. But we will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.